All right, good afternoon, everyone. If you will please take your seats, silence your phones if they have not already been silenced. We are here to do a little bit of work today. I'm so happy to see everyone's faces. My name is Mayor Dahlia Vertreese of Hillside, New Jersey. And I want to welcome you to the League of Municipalities Diversity, Inclusion, Equity, and Belonging panel. We are definitely going to be talking about how government is grappling with some of these changing issues. It is our responsibility to provide good government by monitoring and adjusting to the needs of the people. So you'll have some wonderful commentary tonight. I hope that you learn how we are doing our work and how different municipalities are changing, and also how the state is adapting and adjusting to some of those changes as we move into the 21st century. So I want to thank you and congratulate you on your bravery. I welcome you to have some of these intricate discussions. You know, I don't think Assemblywoman Sumter is going to tolerate the mealy mouths. She's going to want you to converse. She's going to want you to ask questions, and we're here to do the work. So this is my welcome. Thank you for coming, and I am so proud to introduce Assemblywoman Shavonda Sumter, who will be our moderator for today.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, thank you. So I'm Assemblywoman Shavonda Sumter. I'm chair of the New Jersey Legislative Black Caucus, and I am honored to be here moderating this panel. This is one of our favorite topics where we actually can have impact, especially via government. I want to thank Jason Holt for once again inviting me to serve as a moderator. The work that we do here, the conversations that we have can lead to change, not only on a municipal level, but on a state level. So what I need from you today is I need for you to participate. If not, I'm going to badger all these people up here and ask them hard questions, and they will be able to answer it, but I want you to start with this question in your mind before we even begin. How much pie is left, and how should it be divided? I want you to think about how you can be intentional on dividing this pie. We know that there's a stark wealth gap between the Black Latinx communities in our state of New Jersey that has been established. We have to now be intentional, and this panel will tell you about some of the steps that they've taken to be intentional in moving the needle to be sure that we have diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So I'd like to start by letting you also know that each of the panelists' bios are on the app and on the website. So if you want to know more about them, please feel free to go there. I am going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves briefly, under 3 minutes. We don't need to know it all, but just a little bit. And you heard from Mayor Vertreese, but I don't know if there's anything else that you'd like to share with this esteemed group.
I'm ready to get to the work.
She's always ready to get to the work. I just want her to breathe. It's all good. Mayor Ravi, Bhalla, City of Hoboken.
Yes, my name is Ravi, Bhalla. I'm from the City of Hoboken. I've had the pleasure of serving as the mayor of Hoboken since.
This is a mic, so.
Okay, so I should talk into this, like this? Or,
We got fancy. We have table mics.
so I'll try to speak loudly. My name is Ravi Bhalla, mayor of Hoboken for about 6 years. Before that, I was an attorney a practicing attorney for about 18 years. So I've seen kind of both sides of, or different angles in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, both as a practicing lawyer as well as a public servant with the City of Hoboken.
Thank you. Can you hear him in the back?
I'm sorry.
All right, so it's taped to the floor, but you're gonna make it work. Don't move it, okay. So we're gonna do this a little differently. So I'm gonna step back from the mic and you all will come to the mic. So that way, because I don't want them to miss this important conversation and topic until we can figure out the mic situation. At this time, Mayor Kaya McIntosh from Willingboro Township.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kaya McIntosh, Mayor of the fabulous Willingboro, and it is my pleasure to be here representing my township today. I am a chemist by trade, and not in my weirdest dreams or most frightful nightmares would I ever imagine being in government. However, I do understand that there is a need for diversity, there is a need for women, there's a need for African Americans to represent their towns. I do now mayor of Willingboro, which is my hometown, which has nurtured me into who I am today. And it has a weird history. Initially, Willingboro was built and it was it didn't allow blacks into the town. And now has it evolved since I've been living there. We've had divestment as our demographic has shifted to a minority-based demographic. So I think this will be a very fruitful conversation, and I am very happy to be getting to work. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Orlando.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Orlando Nixon. I'm with the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey. I serve as their Chief of Policy and External Affairs. I think I'm the only person up here who's not connected to government, but our chamber is like any other chamber. We represent, it's a member organization, and we represent the interests of our membership, mostly businesses, but we have a lot of municipalities that are members of our chamber. Our goal is to empower Black business owners and Black residents of New Jersey to reach their economic best, right, to fill the gap. And so we're here to keep the municipalities honest and to be a connector between the communities in need and the government. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Jason Holt.
Thank you, and good afternoon. My name is Jason Holt. I'm an attorney practicing with Chiesa Shehannon and John Tomasi. I'm a partner there. I'm also the co-chair of their diversity committee. I had the opportunity over many years to hold assorted local government positions and state government as well, from corporation counsel, the business administrator, to working with the local finance board. So I'm very pleased to be here, and I'm also pleased to have assembled this panel because you have some great folks up here that are going to give us a lot of information. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Eric Pennington.
Good afternoon. I'm Eric Pennington, the business administrator for the great city of Newark, under the leadership of Mayor Raz Baraka. He has implemented several measures, some of which we'll talk about more, to make sure that we get our slice of the pie. The question is, how much of the pie is left? It's all left. It's a matter of us to make sure that Black and brown and women and local businesses get their fair share. So we'll talk about that. Like Mayor Bhalla, I'm a reformed attorney. I practiced law for 30 years before I became the business administrator for the city of Newark, and currently the business manager. Before that, I served as corporation counsel for the city of Orange Township and was the municipal court judge there for 10 years and was the chief judge for 9 of those years. So I have a fair familiarity with the process, the procurement process, and local government, and hopeful that I can share some of that information with all of you here today. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Eric. Let's give them a round of applause. Okay, so we're going to move a little different while we check on the mics, but we're going to start with talking about success not being an accident. Again, we have to be intentional. So I'm hoping that this panel will share some ideas as to how you are not only making your successful transition to include DEIB and also making diverse individuals and businesses successful in their respective fields with authority in your community. So we'll start with Mayor Vertreese.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. If you know anything about Hillside, it's 2.7 square miles of a lot of historical drama. Hillside was the last to desegregate its schools, 1984, okay, in the state of New Jersey. So yes, it's 2.7 square miles, but we have a lot of miles to go as it pertains to diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging. We are still very diverse, but very segregated. So what am I trying to do as the mayor? As the mayor, I'm trying to make sure that as I'm appointing developers or attorneys or architects, that they try to, or at least reflect the demographics of my community. I try to be equitable, right? Not equal, equitable in how I'm dividing up the access to those resources. We have our first, and we have a lot of firsts in Hillside, we have our first African-American fire chief. But really, that's not the claim to fame for us. For me, he was a young fire chief. And a lot of people don't think that age has anything to do with diversity. But when it comes to what the next generation is really facing, they want to be able to see themselves in the work that you do as leaders. So if I am recruiting firefighters that are 20 and 30 years old, I also need them to understand that they can have a chief, someone in charge that's not only a minority, but is young enough to still be in the trenches with them and understand what they're going through. Someone who has a family. People don't realize that having a very young family is also an aspect of diversity. There are people who have completely committed to their careers, and that's not a problem. But when you have young children, it creates difficulty in the workforce. And how will we meet people where they are, right? How will we make sure that the people that we have in leadership can also meet the people that they're leading where they are? We also have the privilege of having our first African-American OEM coordinator, because we need to change the face of the people that will save us in the issues of disaster. Mary Dawkins, I see you out there, and I thank you for your service. We are still very, very in need of people like health officers, okay? Our health departments are in need of people that are not just minorities, but also understand some of those complications that keep them from getting vaccines, that make sure that they, and not just the COVID vaccine, like let's not do that. I'm talking about old school flu vaccines, vaccines that are over 100 years old, that weren't political, right? How do you patent the sun if we're thinking about Jonas Salk? How do you patent the sun? This is about making sure that our children aren't dying from very old diseases that they don't necessarily need to because of healthcare. So in Hillside, I have made an express effort to make sure that the decisions that I'm making are not only reflecting the demographics of Hillside, but it's some of those hard decisions. So you notice I said in 1984 we were the last school in New Jersey, the last school district to desegregate. If you've been in the news or you see in the news, you'll see that in Hillside there's this big deal about me closing the pool, right? Well, when they built the pool, they put it on wood chips, concrete on wood chips. Now, if you took chemistry, you know that's just a bad deal. But what really killed the pool was racism. What really killed the pool was racism. Public accommodations was the first thing that we desegregated. And it was the one thing that nobody wanted to share. You ever watch movies, you see they started pouring bleach and stuff in pools because they didn't want to swim together. And they never healed from that. So we didn't have enough members for our pool to keep it alive and well. So we've had to adjust. In what ways can I redo the pool where people feel welcome, they feel safe, they know that their children are safe, that they won't have drowning issues, and that I've hired the engineers and architects to make sure that the pool is equitable and make sure that people belong. So we're going to do a pool and a spray park. We're going to have an aerobics pool for our seniors, making sure that all of those groups from 0 to 99 are reflected. And those are the kinds of decisions that you want not only in your elected officials, but they should be able to articulate as they're making those decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. That's excellent. And again, just note, for those of you under 50, that she said 1984, their schools were desegregated. New Jersey still has some of the most segregated schools because of zip codes in our country. So again, things that are systemic that we still need to work at. Mayor Ravi, are you ready?
Sure.
Great.
That's certainly a tough act to follow, Mayor Varghese, but I'll try my best. Yeah, Hoboken, as mayors or cheerleaders of our city, we are the best small city in America, as you all know. But beyond that, we're also a city that prides itself on diversity and inclusion. That's not just talk, that's action. I was sworn in on January 1st, 2018. And the very first thing I did was, after I was sworn in at my home, was go to City Hall, to the mayor's office, and sign an executive order declaring Hoboken a fair and welcoming community, a fair and welcoming city. What does that mean? Two things. It means that we're not going to be a sanctuary city, so we're not going to have our police department enforce civilian federal immigration laws. But it also means that no matter who you are, no matter what race, religion, gender, gender orientation, gender identification, disability, anybody in Hoboken, American, immigrant, foreign national, you have equal rights. You have equal rights in Hoboken because you have equal rights to this country. That's what our country taught us when our forefathers came to the Statue of Liberty, and came to this country for that opportunity to be equal. I'm a poster boy for diversity. Look at me. I have a turban and beard. I mean, does anyone in Hoboken look like me? Probably not. It's a pretty white city, I'll tell you that. It's about 85% Caucasian, it's about 10% Latino, or 12%, and about 5% African American. But as a Sikh American mayor with roots in Punjab, which is South Asia, as an Asian American mayor, the first Asian American mayor in Hudson County's history, I think it's incumbent upon me not to look at myself as an Asian American mayor, but a mayor who happens to be an Asian American, but look at anybody who is disadvantaged or marginalized as the same as me. So it doesn't matter if somebody is an African American or a Latino American or an Asian American. We have to work together because our challenges are common. I learned that the hard way growing up in the public schools of New Jersey, where I was the brownest kid in my school, and the level of school bullying that some minorities go through in public schools is staggering, and it still happens today. So we try to implement policies in Hoboken, or I do as mayor. We try to walk the walk. I'm proud to have appointed the first female lieutenant in the Hoboken Police Department's history, the first female Latino battalion chief in our fire department. Our city engineer is a female Latino. And think about that one. Engineering is traditionally not a space where women go into. Engineering might not be a space where you see the Latino community go into. But our engineer is not only the best engineer in New Jersey, Olga Garcia, but she was the president of the Municipal Society of Engineers of the state of New Jersey for the last term. So I am not promoting diversity for diversity's sake. I'm promoting diversity because, as Eric Pennington said, that the pie is wide open. The talent is there. I didn't even have to look for these people. These people were already overqualified for their positions. And diversifying the city in terms of not just low-level city employees, but people in executive positions who are from marginalized communities, who are from minorities, is one of my top priorities. We appointed the first African-American judge in Hoboken's history, even though our African-American population is relatively small. But I want to make sure that, as a former recovering attorney, I should say, that when black and brown people come into municipal court, that's their first contact with the justice system. So I want them to see a judge who looks like them, who understands, who grew up facing some of the same challenges that the African-American community faced. I want them, no matter what happens with their case, no matter how it's adjudicated, feeling like they got a fair shake. And diversity is a part of that conversation. So I think sorry if I've taken up more time than I should, but that's some of the things that we're trying to do.
This is what happens when I'm not standing with my So I'm going to stand here because...
I've said enough, but we're trying to move the needle the best we can in Hoboken.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Mayor McIntosh.
Okay. For me, my success is still contingent upon the success of my township. Like I said, I grew up in Willingboro, and then I did go away for my career. And when I would visit back, the town did not look like what it used to when I grew up there. When I grew up, we did have a diverse population. We had a nice mix of white, Spanish, black, and everything was thriving. That's what I remember as a child. Everything was thriving. All our pools were open, our schools were open. We had a lot of economic development. And over the 90s, again, there was what we call white flight, and where people did, the white population, our population did leave. And what I witnessed was a divestment in my community. And it was very apparent. Every time I come back and visit, more stores were closing, schools were closing, the activities were closing, and it wasn't the same bright, fruitful Willingboro that I remember. So I did move back, and when I did, I became very active in the community because I saw this difference. And I didn't understand why a community that was predominantly black, with predominantly black leadership, was not thriving and successful. So when I came back, a couple of years I got involved, and then there was an opportunity for myself and 2 other women to make that change that we knew we needed to make. And so we ran on a platform called Expect More, and it was expect more of yourself, expect more of your community, expect more of local government, and expect more for your community. And with that, I think we've tried to stand on that in terms of making sure that we represent the fullness of our constituents. And that's not only African Americans, that is, we still have our white population, we have a huge Turkish population coming in. And it's just about making sure we, as local government, and me sitting in a seat, is aware and keeping tabs on the pulse of my community. Also, it's really, for me, success also looks like exposing our youth to the government and opportunities, so that they're aware, of the opportunities that they can take advantage of as they grow older. And we also have communication. We're investing in that to make sure that everyone, even the people who don't have a voice in our township, are heard. And we also also leaving a legacy with our youth and making sure that when we're as diversity is a priority for us, we're making sure that the youth also know that, and that when I'm no longer in our seats, or we're no longer in our seats, that we make sure that they also carry on the legacy. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mayor McIntosh. Jason, did you want to add anything there? Thank you.
I think that partnerships are important. If you are going to develop your municipality, you need partnerships. Just like you need partnerships when you're going through school and you decide that you're never going to quit, that you're going to finish and accomplish the goals that you set. It also is very important that you bring on eclectic thinking people, people that can see and work outside the box, that aren't 9-to-5ers, that are all the time workers, that are supportive and have a vision that is consistent with your vision, that is a vision of outreach, that's a vision that will allow you to take steps that perhaps other municipalities have not taken. Eric and I are both former municipal court judges, so we can attest to the fact that the first point of contact is very important. It's extremely important. And as your citizens come through the court system, we don't talk enough about that, but as your citizens come through the court system, you want them to know that they're going to get a fair shake, because a municipal court judge has an extreme amount of authority or power at that point. So be eclectic, don't quit, get the right people in the right positions, and have a goal, set the goal, and do the follow-through and the hard work.
Thank you, Jason. Fernanda, if you don't mind sharing, because you're with the African American Chamber of Commerce, and I know you've done tremendous work in this space.
So at the Chamber, there are two primary goals that we try to satisfy in the DE&I space, and that is being advocates for our communities, and then also troubleshooting. So the advocacy piece comes in making sure that there's good legislation that makes it easier for Black businesses and Black professionals to have access to these opportunities that exist at the municipal level. And it may well be that the legislation is actually written where you can actually see the institutional racism. So when I look at proposed legislation, I really do look at it with that hat on to see where it's going to create hurdles for our community. So there's that advocacy piece, and at all levels. And then the troubleshooting comes in with, when we talk to procurement officers, many of them say they're not Black-owned businesses or minority-owned businesses that are qualified, or if they're qualified, we don't know where they are. And so our chamber serves as a conduit between the business community and the municipalities. And we hold the municipalities accountable, and we ask them specifically, what are the weaknesses? Tell us what they are, because then as the chamber, we will provide that training. And we oftentimes provide it free. And we will ask you about your metrics. What do your numbers look like? And we will also host and arrange and plan showcase meetings. So those are where we will take certain businesses and organize a meet and greet so that we can help the procurement officers expand their network. And so that's just some of the things that we do. And we always, and the other thing, even though we're the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey, we do not discriminate. So if you come to our events, it looks a lot like this room. Our membership is also comprised of all races and ethnicities.
Great, thank you. So, Eric, if you can help us wrap up this question, please.
Sure. I'll say in the city of Newark, we have a budget now that's approaching $1 billion. So there are several $100 million worth of contracts and services that we have to procure. So just a little bit of a change moves moving the needle just a little bit, I should say, can be a significant change for vendors who look like us, who look like this panel and many of the people in the room. One of the things that Mayor Baraka has done to make that accessible is to make sure that his cabinet is diverse, and that the people, because those are the people who ultimately get the services procured. One of the things that we've done is our QPA, our Qualified Purchasing Agent, Anaya Manny, who's looking down right now because she doesn't want me to point her out, is a young black woman who's from Newark. And just like Jason pointed out, when people first come to court, you want to see somebody who looks like you. When you engage in the procurement process, it helps to make sure that there's somebody who understands the difficulties for small minority businesses, small women businesses, and local businesses to meet all the requirements that are necessary. It can be an onerous process. So you need somebody who's on the other side of that phone line or Zoom call or the procurement process who is sensitive to your needs and who's willing to work with you. I'll stand up here and say right now, Naya is one of those people. So for those of you who are vendors out there, you should see her. You should get her card, give her your card, and make her know that you're out there and you want to do service with the city of Newark. The other thing that the mayor done is probably half of his cabinet, the 10 directors in the city are women, and the vast majority of them are black. As Mayor Vertreese said, we do have a long way to go. Although the city is majority minority, our school system, too, is one of the most segregated school systems in the state of New Jersey, still. And we have to work on that. But in terms of procurement, we have policies and procedures in place now to make it easier. We have an outreach mechanism to make sure that the small businesses, local businesses, and minority and women-owned businesses know what services and goods are available. And we'll continue to increase that. I don't mean to dump on Anaya, but if you have suggestions on how we can improve the process, please let her know. You should raise your hand, Anaya. I know you're hiding over there, but she's right there, right behind everybody. And we are committed to making sure. I think Mayor Vertreese said this as well, being equitable. We don't have to be equal, but we certainly want it to be an equitable process so you have an opportunity to compete fairly.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that, Eric. So Eric really led us into our next question. We know that right now we're waiting for our diversity report because we cannot do any set-aside programs for minority women or veterans because we do not have the data to support it. A report has been procured, completed. We're waiting for that to be released from the Department of Treasury. So I implore all of you to reach out to the Department of Treasury to say release the report, because then it would give us data to support the metrics of moving the needle. If you all, and I like to be very pointed because you mentioned Anaya, who is doing a bang-up job in Newark, but that was an intentional hire. Ferlanda, you mentioned reading the legislation and looking for buzzwords. How do you factor into the request for proposals and the RFQs, request for qualifications, into incorporating DEI consideration for procurement purposes? And we'll start with you, Mayor Bhalla, and then move to Mayor Vertreese.
Frankly, we just try to make sure our vendors are as diverse as possible. And when I say that term diversity, I can use it most poignantly from the frame of reference of outside legal counsel. What we're looking for is not, a firm that's got a lot of associates that are Arab American or Asian American or African American. How many, at your law firm, how many equity partners do you have who are diverse? Because if we send business to you in Hoboken, we want to make sure not just that you assign a minority to work on a file, but we want to make sure that origination goes to a minority, because that's where the real power lies in law firms. Not with the associates, it lies with the equity partners. So it's important for us to look at, as mayors, I see Mayor Green and Mayor Warren, it's great to see you guys here. It's important for us to look a little bit deeper, do a bit more of a deeper dive, and say, okay, you're going to send us minorities to work as vendors, or could be engineers, it could be planners, could be architects, could be any field. But, you know, in terms of that piece of the pie, are we sending it to firms that are minority owned? Are we sending work to firms that have ownership, minority ownership? You know, I think that for me is sort of a game changer. We have all that stock language about non-discrimination and affirmative action policies, but at the end of the day, what you actually do is what matters. And, you know, we try to make sure that, you know, we don't just have diversity on its face, but make sure that the people who are benefiting from relationships with the city are also diverse, not on the government side, but on the other side as well.
Thank you. Mayor Vertreese.
Okay. Well, you can always count on me to say something a little controversial. So the last thing that I want to give people this impression of is that being the mayor is some sort of dictatorship. The one thing that I'm always trying to impress upon my community is how much I need them. And a lot of our problems start because we don't have people that are sitting on our zoning boards and our planning boards. Because we were not as familiar with government as we should have been, historically our communities have been taken advantage of. A lot of those industries have abandoned our inner cities, abandoned the places where they have made the most money in industrial progress, and gone to other grasses. However, we're now stuck with brownfields. We're now stuck with the cleanup. And sometimes it's very frustrating because yes, I have the power to appoint, but do you really see my community and the needs of the community, and are you willing to meet us where we are? Because there are easier communities that you can serve as a vendor. You may not have the problems of an industry that are backing right up to residential areas. You may not need or want affordable housing, or you need senior housing. But what I can tell you is that the buck stops with me. So even though I need all of this help, I will be blamed for the failures of vendors. I will be blamed for the failures or the negligence that you try to do in my community. So when we talk about diversity, one of the first things that I'm going to ask you, especially in an interview, is do you really understand or know Hillside? What we've been through and what we need? And can you really address those needs? I actually had an issue where I went a whole year without professional contracts because I would not give business to a vendor that had abused my community. Now, it was 10 years prior to me becoming the mayor, but knowing that history allowed me to protect my community. And so these people were very angry because I would not rehire them. And we are still suffering from those mistakes to this day. But again, there were people who were not watching. For me, I just need you to do the job. I have hired white people, I have hired LGBTQ, I've hired people with disabilities. But can you address the needs of my community? Will you listen to the people that may not have your degrees? When I research your company, do you have minorities on staff? Do you have people with a different voice? And I will ask you those things. And there are people who don't like the fact that I interview every person that I hire into the township. I interview every person, from the crossing guards, to if you want to be on the library board, to if you want to be a township engineer. Because I want to know what your mindset is. Because how you speak tells me exactly how you think. And you'll say little things that kind of out you. And it's not to shame you, but it's not necessarily what my community needs. And it's not saying that you don't do a good job. You just might not be well for me. So that is my responsibility as the mayor. It's not about trying to appease people that are in the political parties or, you know, I want money or who's going to, no. Because there are people who are legitimately suffering from the problems that are 30 and 40 years old. And that is the data that we're waiting on. That is responsible for the gaps in our academia, in our jobs and wealth. So when we talk about inclusion and we talk about being deliberate and intentional, it's not just about your identity or what box you fit into. Those are all just social facts. Can you, in your authentic self, do the job that is necessary to serve the community? So when I put out those RFQs, don't just think that you're gonna get it because of who you're supported by or who you gave money to. And I know people don't like it when I say that, but it's the truth. Because we have gone too far and we have suffered too long. And if we keep going this way, the hatred is gonna continue to breed and fester and get worse. And honestly, that is why we are in a global crisis right now. Because people don't wanna make the hard and truthful decisions that make sense for the people that live here. It's our society, it's our responsibility to protect it. You can either do the job or you can't. But honestly, be honest with yourself and admit that this might not be the right situation for you, and allow other people to take advantage and take advantage of those opportunities because they can see the people that they're serving. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, but Mayor McIntosh gotta go.
Well, all I can really do is echo the sentiments of Mayor Vertreese. I think you hit the nail on the head. And that's all, I mean, you really pretty much said everything I wrote down. I didn't know everybody went through an interview process. We at Willingboro do go through the interview process, and we are very deliberate. We typically lead the conversation with our demographics and the nuances and needs of our community. However, we do ask for their diversity profile also. That is important. It's not the only factor. We do want the best person for the jobs and who can do what's needed to be done for our community. But those questions are definitely asked and taken into consideration. Furthermore, when we do our RFQs, we just did an RFQ for cannabis. We were very deliberate in making sure we had some equitable measures put in place for that. We did make sure that there were discounts for the application if you were a minority, if you're a resident, if you're a woman. So we worked really hard on trying to make sure that we're leveling the playing field for cannabis. Another measure that we do when looking at our RFQs, our council currently is going through the process of just figuring out which opportunities and which positions that we can kind of gear towards our smaller businesses. We have a lot of entrepreneurs in Willingboro and a lot of people who have the trades that are needed for our community. However, they don't have the experience with RFQs and RFPs. So we're trying to educate and position them to be in the position to be able to fill these out and to be able to be considered for these positions. So that's something that council is really, my council is really taking a hard look at to promote diversity and inclusion. Thank you.
And Eric, I'd like you to round us out with talking about the point system, scoring systems in RFQs and RFPs, where legal can really be supportive in making sure that minorities, women, persons with disabilities, veterans are able to compete to get towards diversity.
Thank you for that. I think the point system gives an opportunity to make sure that, I think it was, again, Mayor Vertreese said, to make sure that the respondents know your community. Some of the things you can factor into the points is to make sure in the questions that the respondents are able to provide the services that are specific to the community that we have and the diversity of the community. Some of the things that we do, in addition to that, is we have lots of large contracts, and we multi-million-dollar contracts, but we intentionally break those contracts up to make sure that smaller vendors have an opportunity to compete. Unfortunately, the larger vendors, by and large, are not minority-owned, and they frequently don't have staffs that reflect the diversity of our communities. So we have found that when we turn a contract that may have been a $10 million contract that went to one vendor, and if we make that intentionally go to smaller contracts, so we have 10 $1 million contracts or less, we can get more women and minority vendors to respond. We look for them. We also look to put out requests for qualifications, oftentimes more than an RFP, request for proposal, so we don't have to go necessarily to the lowest responsive bidder, and it gives us an opportunity to look more deeply into who the respondents are. I say we in this whole conversation, but that's really Anaya, again. She does all of that. She makes sure that all of those, the RFPs that we put out typically have that language in them. We do ask for the demographic backgrounds of the individuals who own the companies, and what it is they do. For professional services, for example, we don't even have to go out for an RFP or an RFQ, but we do. But when we go out for those professional services contracts, that will be lawyers and engineers and accountants, we make sure that the firms that respond understand the community. Frequently, in the language that is asked and responded to with respect to understanding the community, you have to be part of the community. You have to look like the community to fully understand it, and it is reflected in those responses, and it is scored accordingly. Scoring is subjective to some extent. We hope that the outcome is objective, but there are people, there are individuals who score that. We want to make sure that the panel that we put out there who score those RFPs and RFQs is also diverse, so that we do have people who are LGBTQ IA friendly and plus, who are women, who are minorities in various ethnicities who are on those scoring panels. And they hopefully will make sure that the responses that we get are representative of what it is that we're looking for in the city of Newark. So those are some of the things that we do to make sure that it's an equitable process and it's fair for people who want to do business with the city.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Jason, did you want to add anything to that? I saw that.
You know, it's tough to be the mayor, I guess. You know, it's just tough. The first decision you make, you've already made somebody mad because somebody else didn't get what they wanted, and you had to make that choice. So one of the things I always suggest to folks that are in those positions is to get as much information as possible, gather as much information as possible to help you with your decision-making process. So if you're doing an RFQ, for example, and you're trying to satisfy all the pay-to-play laws and everything that the qualified purchasing agent knows that you have to do, if you look on the Attorney General's website, the Attorney General of New Jersey, if you look on the website and look at their RFQs, and one of the things that you'll find is they have this extensive questionnaire. And the questionnaire is really quite a burden to complete. But what you get out of that is a lot of information about a particular firm or company that you may need later, that you may want. Oftentimes you have the same vendors that apply over and over and over and over again. And if that questionnaire is completed each time, you'll be able to track their progress and make your own determinations as to what you see and whether or not they are actually addressing some of the questions that you've asked them to address. And of course, knowing the community is paramount. Those folks that know the community understand the subtleties, the nuances of how to actually fulfill your vision as a mayor or a council person. And that's really important. Oftentimes when folks come into town, they don't quite understand what's going on in town and what this means, or Miss So-and-so lives on this particular block, and she is a center of influence and has been a pillar of the community. So we want to address her and take care of the issues that she has. And as an outside vendor coming in, if you know that, you can assist in trying to do that, and makes your government function and run more efficiently and obviously more effectively. And it also gives you an opportunity as the mayor, with the information, to make the choices that you need to make. But you have to be a hands-on mayor. And I know all the mayors in here are hands-on mayors. And you have to understand your community. And if you're a mayor that's from the community, then you understand it. If you're not a mayor that's from the community and maybe a short timer, as someone used to say, you're learning it. But the best thing to possibly do is to gather as much information as possible and use that to make your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we talked about vendors needing technical assistance, especially for the small businesses, needing to understand insurance and potentially bonding. The chambers often do a lot of work in that space. Fernanda, if you want to share again how you partner with a number of businesses to achieve that objective.
Thank you for that question. I actually, if I was called up for the last question, I was going to go in that direction, so I thank you. Because what we do, earlier I said we serve as advocates and troubleshooters, but we're also a sounding board. And so people, businesses, individuals come to us to share the challenges they may have had with the process. So mostly with RFPs, very onerous. It's very difficult for a lot of people to sit down and fill that out and understand what's being asked. If you don't know what's being asked, then you probably aren't giving the right answer. So your responses may not be as complete or robust. So the technical assistance is very important. You may not even know about the funding opportunities. So we do that as well, as we stay connected so that we can notify the community of various opportunities that are presented. We actually were instrumental in getting legislation passed where we get funding from the state to provide training on how you can get bonded if you're in a business that requires, the government requires you to be bonded. It's usually in construction. And so those courses are free because it's funded by the state, but that was a problem that minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, small business owners, they were having issues with understanding, like, how do I go about getting this bonding? There are a lot of different steps, and we walk you through that. We do the training for that. And then as far as a sounding board, someone may have applied for, they may have completed and submitted a proposal, and they have questions about why they weren't selected. We can go and we can kind of have conversations and dialogue with the municipalities and the procurement officers, just so that the next time, because here's the thing, they actually really want more people to apply. It's not, sometimes we think, we think of people as the big bad wolf, right? But they actually want more. They just sometimes don't know the best route or what the best practices should be. And so our chamber serves to fill that void and being the voice for the people who need someone to advocate on their behalf, but also to provide the resources to those professionals who need to have that pool of individuals to consider, and to make sure that that pool is qualified and vetted. Is that good?
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. So a couple of things we heard here. Expect more, right? While a campaign slogan, very relevant to incorporating DEI&B into government. Being intentional about your hiring, female leadership, lieutenants of police departments, engineers, our justice system, making sure that you have a representation in the community that looks like the community, interviewing any person who's going for a contract within your community, some of the things that you have power over, metrics, showcasing in meetings what opportunities are available in your different municipal governments, know your history for your different towns and what impact has occurred within those towns, so we don't make those same mistakes, and having more than just skill. Understanding the community is what you heard here. At this time, we're going to open it up for questions. So if you have questions, please come to the mic, and you can either ask one of our esteemed mayors or any of our expert professionals here on the panel. Brian Aloy. There you go. So it's if you all don't come up, I'm going to just call you out. I'm going to leave you in this room to do that.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. I really wish that I could think of a question, but I want to thank the panel. You guys were great. Mayor, unbelievable Hillside. I had no idea that it was 1984. I'm over 50, but did not know that fact, so that was an amazing fact. The one thing I would like to, I'll give a plug since I always give this plug. I'm the, not only am I an attorney, and I work in Hoboken. Some of you might be familiar with that on the panel. But I'm also the president of the board of Caldwell University. And Caldwell University has a thing called the Caldwell Commitment. And what we do is we give students, we call it I call it like a full ride. So if you are TAG and Pell eligible, which are two government grant programs, Caldwell picks up the rest. For those of you in situations where you might run into individuals on a lower income scale, let them know that they can get basically a free education. They will come out with lots of loans. And I currently am personally working on covering the rest of the costs. The rest of the costs are the room and board, meals, and things of that nature. So that's my plug. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Is there anyone else with a question? If not, I see one of my commissioners from Passaic County, John Bartlett. Come on, John. Thank you, thank you. And you can share with us, this is the county level of government that also partners with our municipality in this space.
All right. Thank you, Shavonda. In a room this diverse, I don't know how two white guys, two white guy lawyers now fall to the mic in a row.
You're the minority.
She just said, John, you're the minority. And this may be the only time until your party tonight that that's true for me. But I'm enjoying it while it lasts. No, everything that this panel said from the municipal level, I think counts just as much at the level of county government. What I'd be interested to hear, having come at this from a lot of different directions, including as a lawyer that does work for municipalities, as a lawyer, mayor, who represents cannabis applicants who are up against an interesting combination between the CRC and municipalities of diversity, expectations, requirements, point systems, et cetera, which sometimes work really well. 33 of 34 of the medicinal cannabis applicants in the 2019 round were diversely owned, those that got the opportunity to proceed towards licenses. Some of them weren't my clients, but that's all right. What are the structural ways, or what are the laws that Shavonda and her team in Trenton could pass to make it easier for municipalities and counties to incorporate these considerations into all these decisions that we make in the world of procurement and hiring and so forth, would be my question to the panel.
Mayor Bhalla. Thank you, John.
You know, when I can't remember the name of the cannabis statute was passed in New Jersey, it feels like it might have been a couple of years ago. There is a 2% municipal tax. Brian, am I right? Is it 2%? There's a 2% municipal tax, I believe, on retail sales, marijuana or cannabis sales at retail dispensaries. And right now, it's up to the municipality, as per my understanding, as to what we do with that 2% tax. It's a hot topic because in one small municipality in Bergen County, the first year they opened, this small municipality generated just on that 2% like $1 million in 1 year. So they immediately increased the number of licenses in that municipality that they're giving out because they saw the opportunity. But the question goes is, from a municipal level, is where is that money directed by the municipality? In Hoboken, the city council, and one council member in particular, wanted 100% of that 2%, which is actually a lot of money. In Hoboken, where we have about 6 licenses for retail dispensaries, the city council wanted to go 100% to the general fund, the general budget. I actually wanted it to go 100% to be redirected into black and brown communities as a form of restorative justice for people who suffered from the war on drugs during the 70s and 80s. Then it was, okay, we'll put 25% of our municipal tax towards restorative justice initiatives. And I said, no, it's not good enough. The whole purpose, or a large purpose of the state law, my understanding was equity, was making sure that, you know, we level the playing field, especially for minorities. So I know it's not state law, but at least in Hoboken right now, the way the law stands is that 75% of any revenue we generate locally has to be redirected towards that concept of restorative justice into our public housing, into any policy measures that directly relate to the impacts of the illegalization of cannabis prior to its legalization, and the people who were impacted by that, and to the extent of incarcerated incorrectly. So 75% of our local revenues, if and when we get a freaking license, a dispensary open, we're on the cusp, right, Brian? So when that happens, 75% is going to go towards disenfranchised minorities, and 25%. That was a compromise we negotiated as a council, mayor council, but I'm happy that the large percentage is going. If we can have stronger state laws that mandated it, it would be less of a discussion at the municipal level. There might be municipalities that don't direct any of their municipal revenue towards causes that help uplift minorities. But if it were mandated, perhaps at the state level, that would be helpful towards the overall advancing that policy.
I want to say, how many of you have tried to navigate through our state website and tried to submit documents and forms? Yeah. How did that go for you? It was horrible, right? It was a horrible experience. 2 months later, you get a letter saying you still did it wrong. You called someone, they told you to go back and do it again and do it this way, and this number doesn't match this one, and this name doesn't match this ID and the EIN. We are moving into this technological space that, particularly for businesses, we needed to be intuitive, we needed to make sense, we needed to be fluid and effective. So it doesn't matter if it's cannabis or if you're going to open up a construction company, our technology within the state is absolutely horrible. And that alone is affecting diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Because if you don't have the time, it doesn't mean that you're negligent or that you don't want to have the time. But many businesses, people who are considered on the margins or historically on the margins, they're busy trying to stay afloat just to keep the $500,000 that we're requiring that you just keep in the bank, not use, right? And then trying to get your revenue up so that you can also do business and submit for the bids. I don't have 8 hours to sit around and play with the state and wonder if my documents are correct, or finding out information that I needed that no one told me I needed. So when we talk about if we're going to really help businesses and vendors be more effective, particularly minority businesses, we need to first start with that. Everything else seems more effective and fluid than our state government's website. And that alone is just unfair. It makes the playing field unfair because everybody doesn't have staff to sit there and resubmit and hunt down documents and try to figure out what they need and ask the questions and stay on the phone for hours. It is a daunting, frustrating process. So in addition to everything else that we're trying to do, when we talk about cannabis, I think that the government, the state government, needs to do more to reach out to our vendors and our municipalities. We need to use entities like our Chamber of Commerce. There are multiple Chamber of Commerce, so that every business, every vendor that registers within the state knows when those meetings are happening. And there should be government officials there to help walk them through this process. But I also think that the government, the state government, needs to step up in their technology game, because it's horrible. It is absolutely ridiculous and frustrating to put people through that.
Great, thank you. Absolutely. Wait, you didn't want me to call on anyone?
Well,
I'm just joking.
we don't know each other yet, but I'm Melanie McDermott from Highland Park. So I have two questions. I think they're related, but not. I'll leave that to you to decide. So the title of the session, that DEI, how much pie is left and how should it be divided? I thought perhaps that was partly driving at some of the headwinds that DEI is running into these days. I'm not sure if that was what, we're hearing, NASCAR is being sued, because DEI is discriminating against white males. You've got the culture wars happening. So I didn't know if that was something that was pertinent to this panel and the theme of the panel. And my second question has to do with the surprising fact, well, I guess it's not that most of us know it, New Jersey is a highly segregated state. We have 565 municipalities. There are a surprising number, and I wish my head for numbers was better to roll out the figures, of smaller towns and that are predominantly white. So I wonder how much of some of the reflections that you all have shared from your diverse communities, that some of the, I work for Sustainable Jersey, we invite all different kinds of municipalities to participate. What are some of the takeaways that mayors and council from towns where it is a white majority can do a better job in the DEI space? So two things I'd love to hear from anybody about.
Orlando, thank you.
So one of the things that I wanted to it's a thing that I wanted to reiterate that Assemblywoman Sumter said earlier, the disparity study. The disparity study, when released, will be a game changer. And I cannot emphasize that enough, which is why you have to go back and you have to hound Treasury to get that released. Because what that then does is it requires procurement officers to meet certain metrics. And if they don't meet those metrics, what happens is it gives us a cause of action to sue them. And then once people start to get sued, what do? They change their behavior. And so you see in New York, it's a great state to do business if you're a minority-owned business, because they did their disparity study, they have their metrics, they have their requirements, and it's really a very robust and more equitable state for small business owners and minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses. So I just really wanted to say that sometimes we think legislation and studies don't really matter, but certain ones do to modify behavior. And I think once you see that released, you're going to see kind of like a trickle-down effect, because it has meat to it. And so I just wanted to let you know, and I'm being a little cynical when I say this, that might be why they're hesitating to release it, because once you release it, it holds you accountable. And so I just want to say again, you're empowered to, have your voice heard and to reach out you can do it through us. Actually, we do that type of work too. We issue statements on behalf of our members in our communities. And because I'm actually really at that point right now, because I don't understand, it's been done for quite a while. It just hasn't been released, and so it's a head scratcher for me.
So, thank you for that, Philando, because every time I see the governor and every time I'm here, I mention it. To your first part of your question, we actually came up with this panel setup early on because we knew it was a connector from last session, last year, despite the tenor of what's happening in the world. Two, New Jersey, zip code state, one of the last states in the North to end slavery, has a deep-seated history of zip code, zoning out, redlining, that we're still working to repair. Segregated schools still exist. You heard it here as well as it's been documented. The Education Law Center has an active case now as a result of that. So we have work to do. As a state legislator, over 500 plus towns, local home rule means a lot in our communities. And being able to live where you desire to live, urban, suburban, rural, bison country, farmland, we have it all, right? So choice is good here, beach, etc., but there are things that we need to work on to make sure that we are inclusive, being a diverse state. To the esteemed panel, I want to really thank you for being transparent, for sharing the work that you're doing in this space, being intentional, being transformational, and also opening up this session here at the League with your full self. So thank you. Let's give them a rousing round of applause. Of course, here we are.
But,
it's like the benediction. Y'all don't want to have it?
No, I'll be quick. And thank you, panel, for giving this amazing session. It was very informative. I just want to share something that's worked in my city, Patterson. My name is Eamon. I'm the Corporation Counsel there. I know many of the faces on the stage. When I became the law director there, I realized there was a lack of diversity in outside counsel. And one of the things that I did is I tried to streamline the paperwork, because as it was said and recognized, a lot of times paperwork historically has been used to keep people out, right? You didn't file the right paperwork, you don't have all the information on paperwork. So in cutting the paperwork down substantially and also qualifying everybody, right? Rather than sit there and pick winners and losers and who gets to be on and who doesn't, when you qualify everybody, you have a deep bench, as they say. And that's worked very well in diversifying our outside attorneys. And you get a cross-section. People who are starting their own firms, they can handle certain types of cases. People more sophisticated. People that left bigger firms and says, I want more of the pie, and I'm going to go out. So it's just something to consider. We've had some success in Patterson. I know Mayor Saya, diversity is very important to him. His cabinet is extremely diverse, and so that's worked very well for us. So I would implore people to consider those sorts of strategies, because you'll open a lot of doors. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Hi, my name is Gabrielle Douglas. I work with the City of Trenton Continuum of Care, Trenton Mercer Continuum of Care. So we work with the homeless population in our community, and we all know that in America, the homeless situation has really gotten out of a lot of our hands, especially within the municipalities. So from my position, I just wanted to know advice from the mayors and people in power. When reviewing proposals for grants, right? How do you keep diversity in that level? Because a lot of our nonprofits I wouldn't say aren't people that look like the demographics of people that are homeless in a lot of these communities, but it's just different. And how can we really assess those proposals to make sure that we're including diversity, to make sure that those people that are providing services and that we're funding millions of dollars to provide services are, one, look like the people that they're serving, but also truly care to get the true turnaround to help the homeless individual. Because as we know, there's plenty of barriers. There's mental health, it's addiction, right? And that takes a lot of work. So what is some advice that you can give on that level to me, so that I can be able to go back and try to plan and create a difference with the funding that is there?
Mayor Bhalla.
Just very briefly, because I know we're tight on time, this is not a complex answer, but we took a cue from the city of Newark in Hoboken. The problem of people who are unhoused, housing insecurity, and people who are experiencing homelessness is not peculiar to any one city. It is a statewide and a national problem that cities across the country are facing. It's not really a law enforcement issue. As you said, it's a whole kind of cycle of needing social services, mental health services. One small thing we did is we're not as big as Newark, but we hired 2 social workers, and we made sure that they were bilingual. So we had we have a social worker who can speak Spanish, who can connect with people who might face those linguistic barriers, and somebody who kind of like look like them and can connect with those people in that segment of the population that were experiencing homelessness. So it's really kind of at least in our one example in Hoboken, it's about trying to make sure that the hires you make sort of reflect the challenges that you're trying to address.
Address that too. McIntosh and then Mayor Vertreese.
I will also add, just maintain the lines of communications to your county and the state. I think though you have to leverage them as much as possible. You are the advocate for what you're trying to achieve. And so I would say maintain those, be a pain in their behind. And trust me, those grants, they start to develop around the needs that you express also. So I would say definitely keep those lines of communications, be a bug. Like I said, you are the advocate. As mayor, I'm the advocate. I have to keep calling, our commissioners, the governor. I also utilize Association of the Urban Mayors. That coalition actually helps, advocate, issues that are inherent in our communities, but reach out to them. They do definitely want to hear other people's voices and then represent us at the table, even towards the White House. So keep those lines of communications open.
You asked a very good and hard question. And I say that because homelessness is something we all want to pretend doesn't exist, right? We see it, we don't really want to acknowledge it. And as the mayor, I've had a lot of difficulty obtaining data about homelessness and how we are defining homelessness, right? It's like this idea that I'm middle class, but if you really look at what middle class is, $46 billion is the upper class and the lower class is 0. If you fit in the middle of $46 billion, none of us are middle class. So we don't really want to go into that. That's kind of how we treat homelessness. And we are really missing the data for who needs assistance, because the reality is if you are sleeping on your aunt's couch, you're homeless. When you don't have a job and you've been released from prison, you're homeless. And we're not capturing that data. So as the mayor, as the governor, any executive, the one thing that people will always hold you accountable for is what you can prove, right? They don't want to hear you say, I see it, but I can't prove it. So that's why the data is so important, because you need the evidence. You also have a high transient population that makes it that much more difficult, and our federal government doesn't speak to itself. Social Security is not speaking to Veterans Affairs. They can't share certain information, and a lot of information gets lost. So while we're investing in a lot of the programs that address homelessness, those are some of the gaps that keep us from actually attending to those populations because of the lack of that data. So if we could get some more cooperation between our colleges and universities that are actually studying homelessness as a social issue to speak directly to our state, county, and federal levels, right? And the federal is important because these are the people that supply our food pantries. These are people that provide our homelessness shelters. That's where that money comes from. But if we as a state don't have the information and the data to prove why we need enhancements in that funding, and we're constantly dealing with a budget that also does workarounds, because they're easy to just, push the button and say, yes, that's how we've always done it in the past. We never move towards the future because we're not properly analyzing the data that we still don't have. So that's for you as an advocate, as an activist for homelessness. That is actually some of the issues that we're having and trying to impact that population. Thank you.
So also, I think I heard you say that you're concerned that your work staff may not be diverse and reflect the community.
So the nonprofits that provide the services, not all the time.
So usually in the grant application, it allows you to say who's actually working on the grant, and if you have to get a subcontractor in to get that diversity, so you may have to have the nonprofit, and then the nonprofit may have to reach out, expand its network, and go to some of the vendors in this room who are minority-owned businesses that can help bolster your application, because they're all graded on a rubric. So you have a point system, but almost all of them are graded on a rubric. So if you can go out and do some partnering and some strategic alliances in demographics that will make you look stronger in the DE&I area, I would recommend you do that as well.
Great. Let's give our panel a round of applause and thank you for coming out and joining us. Enjoy your day. The panel will be here if you want to ask some questions specifically.
Good job, good job. Wonderful job, everybody.
Y'all did everything well.